what is the way forward to actually beating and preventing chronic disease?
Well, I think you're hinting at it. On the one hand, there's the responsible health system to value prevention and to be remunerated to actually give time to prevention, whether it's smoking, weight management, and so on. Secondly, I think that the innovations we're learning from Vitality around behavioral economics are profound. We know, as Adrian Gore would often say, is that people act in their worst long-term interest. It's called hyperbolic discounting. You have a short-term perspective. Think about when people go to a buffet. They're not thinking about the consequences of overeating and eating X, Y, and Z for what's going to happen in a year or 2 or 3 years down the line. Or if it's a cold, miserable day, people will often say, let's stay in bed and not go to the gym or exercise. So because of that inherent human nature, these are not bad people, these are just people. The whole idea of incentives is actually to help people get over that hump and give them another reason to try and get on with their activity. The experiments that have been done over the years in Vitality show that people do respond, and they respond for the long term. They don't just, it's not 1 day or 2 days or 3 days. There are years and years of experience. We also know that people respond if you take things away from them that they want. A classic example is in parts of the world, people get an Apple Watch free when they sign up for life insurance under Vitality. And it stays free as long as they use their watch for activity. Now, even very wealthy people don't want to have to pay stuff for things that they could get free. And that behavioral motivation has a big impact. So I would say understanding even more how we deal with having better ways of making it easier for people to live their lives makes sense. And then thirdly, outside of the home and outside of the clinic is the broad environment, where people step out into a food environment where the cheapest food is often very tasty, and it's more accessible to young people and to older people. And it starts explaining why we need to think about the regulatory and policy environment, which is something I've also dealt with. Or think about the cities where it's very difficult to go for a walk or jog or run or find a place to do some physical activity because of the structural problems of not having thought that through in cities. And I could go on, but I think that why I feel positive is that there are many organizations and groups starting to address this. There are now 100 cities which are defined as resilient cities, trying to make livability healthy, fun, environmentally sustainable. Over the long term, that'll mean you won't have to think actively about it because you'll have more public transport, you'll have green spaces and so on. But that's a long way off. In the meantime, I think we do have to rely a lot more on the role of the physician, the role of the healthcare professional in really giving greater support to their patients around this. One of the interesting things I did with Vitality quite a few years ago, they had a group of the leading physician groups in the country, so the heads of obstetrics and gynae and pediatrics and all of them in the room. And our job was to inspire them about the value of prevention. And I'd been warned they were not particularly excited about prevention. So what we did was, most of them were members of Vitality. So we got their health status and their Vitality status, and we showed them the data that they were not doing too well, and that the doctors, for example, who smoked had twice the number of patients who smoked in their clinic, and that the weight of the doctor was proportionate to the weight of their patients. Wow. Of course, that started a fun discussion around the importance of the influence that professions can play and do play, subtly, overtly, sometimes not so subtly, on their patients. And I mention that because often we forget that that point of interaction between the doctor and the patient is one of the most profoundly important ones that can put people on a path to at least getting involved in prevention if the other elements are in place.